She was just a 28-year-old backpacker heading to Europe for her gap year adventure. But when severe turbulence knocked out the flight crew, the 320 passengers were about to discover that their fellow traveler was former Air Force pilot Captain Maria Santos, who had resigned from military service just 6 months ago. 28-year-old Maria Santos sat comfortably in seat 18C, typing away on her travel blog. Her shoulder-length brown hair, vintage denim jacket, and well-worn backpack made her look like any typical gap-year traveler. The American Airlines crew addressed her with friendly Miss Iz, and the college student beside her was sharing travel tips. No one suspected she was anything more than an ordinary tourist on American Flight 2156 from New York JFK to Amsterdam. But Maria Santos was far from ordinary. 6 months ago, she had resigned from the United States Air Force with the rank of captain. For 7 years, she had served as an F-16 Fighting Falcon pilot, later transitioning to transport aircraft including C-130 Hercules and KC-135 Stratotanker missions, Iraq, Afghanistan, humanitarian operations. She had accumulated thousands of flight hours under every challenging condition imaginable. When she separated from service, she left behind a Distinguished Flying Cross, Air Medal, and Outstanding Pilot of the Year award. Now, for the first time, she was just Maria. Not a military service member, not a rank, not a set of responsibilities, just a 28-year-old woman embarking on a journey of self-discovery in Europe. This was her attempt at normal life. The civilian adventure she had promised herself after military service was finally beginning. Her best friend Ashley's words still echoed in her ears. "Girl, you need to find yourself outside of that uniform." The Boeing 787 Dreamliner, which had just taken off from New York JFK, was climbing to cruising altitude as Maria edited her Instagram post. The NYU student beside her was constantly watching TikTok videos, while the European exchange students behind her were making Amsterdam plans. A normal transatlantic flight, normal young people, normal millennial concerns. Maria typed another paragraph of her travel blog entry, but subconsciously monitored the engine sounds. Air Force training never disappears. Every vibration, every sound variation, every slight change, everything was automatically processed. Ladies and gentlemen, this is Captain Davis. We're currently cruising at 41,000 feet over the Atlantic. We may encounter some light turbulence, so please fasten your seatbelts and enjoy the rest of your flight. Maria looked up. With 7 years of military aviation experience, she read the cabin crew's body language. The glances between lead flight attendant Rachel Thompson and other crew members appeared different from routine communication. Something was concerning. The aircraft suddenly shook, first light turbulence, then it escalated to moderate intensity. Maria closed her laptop and looked outside the window. The cloud patterns over the Atlantic Ocean were rapidly shifting, with intense jet stream activity. But the aircraft's response characteristics were abnormal for a normal turbulence encounter. "This is getting rough," said the student Jake in the seat next to her, securing his laptop. "Just Atlantic weather patterns," Maria said reassuringly. "Normal for this route." But her trained ears were catching different signals. Engine harmonics were slightly off, flight control responses were delayed, and there were irregularities in the autopilot system. This was beyond ordinary turbulence. Just then, Rachel Thompson took the PA, but her voice tone was different from usual. "Ladies and gentlemen, we're experiencing moderate turbulence. Please return to your seats immediately and keep your seatbelts fastened." Maria's military-trained ear detected the underlying tension in Rachel's voice. The hand signals and rapid eye contact between flight attendants were emergency communication protocols. This wasn't routine turbulence management. The aircraft shuddered violently again, this time much more severe. Overhead compartments rattled and service items scattered. Maria secured herself to her seat, but the pilot instincts in her mind became fully alert. She was analyzing aircraft behavior patterns and calculating potential scenarios. "You okay?" asked the business traveler Alex in the aisle seat with a worried expression. "I'm fine, thanks," Maria said, her eyes never moving from the flight crew. Rachel Thompson and her team were maintaining constant interphone communication with the cockpit. Maria couldn't completely hear the conversations, but the urgency in their tones was unmistakable. Something was going seriously wrong. The aircraft suddenly executed a sharp right bank. This wasn't a turbulence response. This was deliberate pilot input. With her experienced analysis, Maria assessed the quality of the maneuver. The pilot was struggling, and control was incomplete. Exactly then, Rachel Thompson emerged from the cockpit door. Her face was pale, her movements urgent. Maria immediately recognized an incoming medical emergency announcement. "Ladies and gentlemen," Rachel's voice was trembling this time, "if there's a medical doctor on board, please identify yourself immediately. We have an urgent medical situation." Maria's heart rate spiked. A cockpit medical emergency. Every pilot's nightmare scenario. Dr. Michael Chen and Dr. Lisa Parker identified themselves, and Rachel immediately escorted them to the cockpit. Maria checked her smartwatch. Only 2 hours had elapsed since JFK departure. There were still 6 hours remaining to Amsterdam. 5 minutes later, Rachel returned, and her facial expression twisted Maria's stomach. The experienced flight attendant was struggling with panic. "Ladies and gentlemen," Rachel's voice was almost a whisper, "Captain Davis has suffered a sudden medical emergency. First Officer Collins is controlling the aircraft but requires additional assistance." Maria's world stopped. Dual pilot incapacitation. Every aviator's worst nightmare scenario. "Please stay calm," Rachel continued, losing her own composure. "Air traffic control has been contacted. Emergency procedures." The aircraft suddenly dropped nose down. The G-forces affected everyone's stomachs. This wasn't a controlled descent. This was an uncontrolled fall. Panic erupted, screams, crying, prayers. Maria looked at the surrounding chaos. 320 people, 41,000 feet over the Atlantic Ocean, with no pilots. Rachel Thompson made a desperate final announcement over the PA. "Anyone with any aviation experience, any flight training whatsoever." Maria Santos stood up. 7 years of Air Force experience, 3,500 flight hours, training in every possible emergency scenario, all of it instantly returned. She might be a civilian, but pilot instincts never disappear. "I'm here," Maria said, her voice audible enough throughout the entire cabin. Rachel turned, staring at the young woman with shock. "Excuse me, miss." "I'm a pilot," Maria said, straightening her denim jacket. 7 years United States Air Force captain rank, multi-engine aircraft qualified, current on Boeing 787 systems. Rachel's mouth opened wide. The surrounding passengers were staring at Maria with amazement. "Wait, you're actually a pilot?" asked Jake beside her in complete disbelief. "Captain Maria Santos," Maria said, her voice carrying 7 years of military command authority. "Air Force separated 6 months ago. Right now, we need to get this aircraft safely down." Rachel Thompson wasted zero time. "Come with me immediately, Captain." Maria followed Rachel, walking toward the cockpit. She could feel the stunned stares of the passengers behind her. A young backpacker tourist was now going to save 320 lives. When the cockpit door opened, Maria witnessed a terrifying scene. Captain Davis was unconscious, with doctors providing emergency medical care. First Officer Collins, in his early 30s, was in a panic state, barely maintaining control. "I'm Captain Santos," Maria said, using her 7 years of command voice. "Situation report now." Collins turned, bewildered to see a young civilian woman. "Who?" 7 years Air Force aviation," Maria said definitively. "Multi-engine qualified, 3,500 hours, current systems knowledge. Situation report immediately." Relief appeared on Collins's face. "Captain collapsed, autopilot malfunctioning, severe weather continuing, systems failing." "Roger," Maria said, moving toward the pilot seat. "I have the aircraft." When Maria sat in the pilot seat, 7 years of muscle memory instantly activated. Her hands automatically scanned all controls. The autopilot had indeed failed, trim was completely wrong, and the aircraft was in an unstable configuration. "Collins," Maria said with a calm, decisive voice, "current status. Altitude, speed, fuel, weather, systems." Flight level 410, 480 knots, overspeed, fuel 60%, severe turbulence, multiple system warnings, Collins reported, becoming calmer. Maria seized the controls and immediately felt the difference. The aircraft was erratic and dangerous, but now experienced hands were controlling it. Contact ATC now, Maria ordered. Gander Center, American 2156, emergency, dual pilot incapacitation, military qualified passenger now flying. Collins opened the radio. Gander Center, American 2156 heavy, medical emergency, dual pilot incapacitation, passenger taking control. American 2156, Gander Center, Roger. Are you declaring an emergency? Maria took the microphone. Gander Center, American 2156 heavy, declaring Mayday, Mayday, Mayday. Dual pilot medical emergency, passenger Captain Maria Santos, former U.S. Air Force, now controlling aircraft. Request immediate vectors, emergency descent, closest suitable airport. The radio response sounded shocked. American 2156, confirm former military pilot passenger? Affirmative, Gander Center. Former Air Force captain, 7 years experience, multi-engine current, ready for vectors and emergency approach. Roger, American 2156, turn right heading 090, emergency descent to flight level 200, Reykjavik available, emergency services standing by. Maria expertly established the aircraft on the new heading. Military precision, back in cockpit command after 7 years. Collins, Maria said, notify cabin crew, emergency approach to Reykjavik, full emergency landing preparation, evacuation readiness. Collins gave instructions to Rachel via interphone. Maria was performing a comprehensive check of aircraft systems, emergency procedures, fuel management, weather assessment, military training returning automatically. American 2156, Gander Center, contact Reykjavik, approach 118.9, emergency cleared direct runway 01. Reykjavik approach 118.9, American 2156, Maria responded with natural aviation communication. Rachel Thompson informed the cabin, ladies and gentlemen, Captain Santos is safely flying us to Iceland for an emergency landing. Assume emergency positions and follow instructions carefully. Passengers murmured. Who is Santos? That young lady is a pilot. Is that possible? As Maria prepared for the approach, she remembered her military separation day. 7 years of service completed, time to try civilian life and have a normal 20s experience. But the sky had never released her. Collins, approach checklist, Maria commanded. Gear extending, flaps 30, approach speed 140 knots, emergency configuration, Collins reported. Maria established a perfect approach path. Reykjavik airport lights were visible through the Arctic twilight. Emergency vehicles were positioned around the runway perimeter. American 2156, Reykjavik Tower, wind 020 at 15, runway 01, cleared to land. Full emergency response ready. Cleared to land runway 01, American 2156. Maria expertly guided the controls. Crosswind compensation, perfect flare, smooth touchdown, maximum braking. Every action was textbook military precision. The Boeing 787 completed a successful emergency landing at Reykjavik. Welcome to Iceland, Maria said, showing her first smile. The cabin erupted in applause. Passengers were crying, cheering, shouting, "Thank you, Captain." When the door opened, the first person to enter was Reykjavik Airport Emergency Coordinator Björn Eriksson. "Captain Santos," he said, expressing amazement. "Maria Santos," Maria said, adjusting her denim jacket. "Miss, can you confirm former Air Force service?" "United States Air Force, 7 years as captain. This morning I was a backpacker tourist now. Apparently I'm a pilot again." The next day, global media covered Maria's story. CNN, 28-year-old former Air Force pilot saves 320 lives. BBC, millennial backpacker reveals military aviation background. Fox, gap year, adventure becomes heroic rescue. Maria wasn't bothered by it. That evening in her Iceland hotel, her best friend Ashley video called, "Girl, you're everywhere. That was incredible. Are you okay?" Maria smiled. "I'm fine. Turns out military training never really leaves you. So you're going back to flying? Maria watched the northern lights through the window. Maybe, Ash. Maybe the sky isn't ready to let me go civilian just yet. The next morning, the American Airlines CEO personally contacted her. Captain Santos, we need to have a discussion. I'm separated from service, Maria replied. After yesterday's performance, would you consider consulting work? Training programs? Emergency procedures? Maria hesitated. Maybe civilian life was just a pause. Let's talk, Maria agreed, because real pilots never completely separate. They just accept different missions. And Maria Santos, beneath her backpack, still remained the sky's commander. 6 months later, Captain Maria Santos stood in United's training facility in Denver, teaching young pilots emergency scenarios. Remember, she told them, wearing her new instructor uniform. You never know when your training will be tested. I thought my military days were finished, until 320 people needed me to remember exactly who I was. That day, she had returned not as tourist Maria Santos, but with her true identity as Captain Santos, the sky's eternal guardian. Her gap-year European adventure had become her most important flight ever. Sometimes, Maria often said to her trainees, the most crucial flights are the ones you never planned to take. The young woman in seat 18C had been writing an Instagram travel blog about finding herself. She never imagined she would be living the adventure she was trying to write. When the flight crew collapsed and 320 lives were hanging in the balance, Maria Santos proved that some callings never truly end. They just wait for the right moment to return. And sometimes, the sky calls you back when you're needed most. Beneath her denim jacket, she still carried her wings. Inside her backpack, a captain's heart still beat. At 28 years old, she was supposed to be finding herself in Europe. Instead, she found herself again at 41,000 feet, where she had always belonged. The military had trained her to fly. Life had taught her when to soar. And on that day over the Atlantic, when everything went wrong, Maria Santos remembered that some identities aren't just jobs, they're callings that never truly fade. Her backpacking adventure had become a rescue mission. Her gap year had become a gap filler when the world needed a pilot. Sometimes, the best way to find yourself is to remember who you've always been. Thanks for watching. If you liked this video, you can subscribe to see more incredible stories like this one.